Hello everyone, welcome to the Sunday Guardian show by Joyita Basu. I'm the editor of the Sunday Guardian newspaper. As you know, the G20 meeting in Bali has concluded. On the sidelines of G20, among the several bilateral meetings that took place among leaders, one was between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping. Now, it's a different matter that I do not understand why the leader of the free world had to meet dictator-in-chief who single-handedly destroyed the lives and livelihoods of billions of people worldwide by spreading his Wuhan virus and got away scot-free. Anyway, now that Mr. Biden has met Mr. Xi Jinping, what did Mr. Biden discuss with the Chinese president? You see, there lies the problem. The statements that the two sides issued after the meeting on what transpired behind closed doors left me astounded. Now, if you see the readouts issued by the White House and the Chinese Foreign Ministry, it's as if the two sides attended two different meetings. Now, with China being assertive and wielding the stick, while the US president is only raising objections and voicing concerns. Now, listen to this part of the Chinese statement. Now, according to the Chinese, Biden apparently said that the United States does not seek a new Cold War, does not seek to revitalize alliances against China, does not support Taiwan independence, does not support two Chinas or one China, one Taiwan. And apparently, US has no intention to have a conflict with China. And the US side has no intention to seek decoupling from China, to halt China's economic development, or to contain China. Wow. I mean, that's a whole lot of no's. I mean, I can understand the part about one China because the US already adheres to it. But what does China mean when it says that the US is not seeking to revitalize alliances against China or contain China? Now, it essentially means that Biden has killed the Quad as well as the AUKUS, AUKUS. Now, it also means that the US is accepting China's hegemony in the Indo-Pacific region, giving it a free hand in the Pacific Island countries, in the South China Sea, in fact, everywhere. I mean, just imagine the rest of the world's China policy, its Indo-Pacific policy, everything falls apart with that one statement. Interestingly, now if you check the White House statement, Biden said that the United States will continue to compete vigorously with the PRC, including by investing in sources of strength at home and aligning efforts with allies and partners around the world. The White House readout also says that Biden encouraged North Korea to act responsibly and underscores the US's ironclad commitment to defending its Indo-Pacific allies, presumably against North Korean threats. So is China lying? Now, Biden did mention allies and partners, but we were not in the room. So unless and until the White House comes out and rebuts the claims made by China, specifically about alliances and decoupling, etc., the history books will tell posterity that Mr. Biden committed to all these things. You see, the problem with Biden's statement is that he's too diplomatic. He talks about competing by investing in strengths and aligning efforts with allies and partners. Is he talking about military strengths here? Or about economic strength? Or is it both? At the same time, Biden is saying that competition should not become conflict, which is fine. But to preempt conflict, containing China is a must, given its aggressive nature. But Biden has just committed to not containing China, or so say the Chinese. Now, Biden also raised US objections to the PRC's coercive and increasingly aggressive actions towards Taiwan. But he didn't say, the way he did when referring to North Korea, that he was committed to defending his Indo-Pacific allies against China specifically. Similarly, when it comes to human rights violations, Biden raises concern about PRC practices in Xinjiang, Tibet and Hong Kong. but he did not say even once that such violations would have serious consequences. So what does China do? It just brushes aside Biden's concerns and claims that it too has Chinese-style democracy, something it calls the whole process people's democracy. Interestingly, not for once does the White House readout mention trade, while the Chinese complain about the US weaponizing trade and economy. You see, the reference, of course, is to the ban imposed by the Biden administration on the export of semiconductor chips and high-tech equipment. Now, this ban has the potential to kill China's semiconductor industry. Now, China is also seeking the immediate lifting of tariffs that were imposed by Donald Trump on products. Now, tariffs that are obviously hurting China. Now, also, what is this about the US promising to abandon decoupling? Now, which the Chinese are claiming. Now, that essentially means that the US will give up supply chain resilience or diversification of manufacturing. So, forget about all that happened during the COVID pandemic when China shutting down resulted in the rest of the world coming to a halt. Now, it's happening even now with Foxconn's iPhone manufacturing factories in China shutting down because of Xi Jinping's zero COVID policy. And now, what is the news that we are getting instead? News is emerging that the US and China will deepen economic cooperation. This is what the US is saying. So, what's going on here? A reset of US-China relationship? Now, what has a dictator who is committing a genocide of his own people, the Uyghurs, done to be back in the good books of the US? Now, why is Biden taking such a soft approach towards Xi? Now, the Chinese are talking about bringing US-China relations back on track. And the US seems to be agreeing. Now, what does this signify? That the US will continue with its decades-old soft on China policy, with the recent quote-unquote tough actions being mere blips? Also, why didn't Biden raise any questions about the coronavirus pandemic that Xi gifted to the world? Now, Xi's China may be hobbled with economic problems. It is under, in fact, major economic problems currently. But that does not mean he is not seeking to be Emperor Xi of a future Middle Kingdom. Now, does Mr. Biden realize that China is trying to dislodge the US to become the world's sole superpower? Now, Xi just told Biden that it was his right to get all sorts of concessions, including abandoning allies and partners, so that China can be and rewrite the world with Chinese communist characteristics. And Mr. Biden smiled in response, even when he knows that Xi is propping up Russia against Mr. Biden's current favorite, Ukraine. In fact, Xi is working very hard to undermine the democratic world order that Mr. Biden leads, apart from gnawing at the innards of Mr. Biden's own country, hollowing it out from inside. So how can Mr. Biden make the same mistake that Obama made of thinking that the economic mainstreaming of China will lead to a better, more humane China? President Biden should not forget that the communist regime in China is like a leopard. It does not change its spots. Meanwhile, many of us are still waiting for a rebuttal from the White House on the claims that China made about Mr. Biden promising the sun, moon, and the universe to them. Thank you for watching. Until the next time.